Hello and welcome to Yodo. I have brought back Chaplain Skee to talk to us a little bit more about being a chaplain, hospice, and palliative unit at the VA. How are you today, Chaplain?
Good. Thanks for having me back. I really appreciate it.
I've got some more questions for you. One of them is I want to talk with you a little bit about pain because I know everybody thinks of pain as just a singular thing that, they have pain from their disease process, but pain can be contributed to by many things, emotional, spiritual, and that's what we call total pain, is addressing the entire person's pain. Can you speak to a little bit about how the chaplain gets involved with total pain?
You bet, because we're listening for different things in the conversation, because we're asking different questions, maybe after the medical team leaves the room, we're looking for those emotional and spiritual connections to their pain. One of the stories that was real popular at the previous company that I worked for, it wasn't one of my patients, but it really illustrates it well. And if I get the details all correctly, I'll be doing good because, again, it wasn't my patient. But a veteran was at home, dying at home, and was really agitated and anxious, and was not peaceful at all. In the conversation, one of the, probably, I believe it was the chaplain, realized that the veteran had been working on submarines during his duty time, was in an accident of some sort, realized that this man was in a very small, tight room right now, dark, no windows, made the connection that it was too much like the submarine that he had been in that accident, and that this may be a post-traumatic stress issue. Once they moved him by the window to a completely different room, he lost his anxiousness and was much better. And of course, his pain level went down then too. His physical pain went down as well, or was easier to manage at that point. All of these things are connected because the human body is amazingly connected emotionally, socially, spiritually. And so having all these different ears with different educational backgrounds on the team helps to make that happen.
A patient may reach a crisis level then with pain that it isn't necessarily related to the disease process, but it sounds like this patient's crisis was brought on by some circumstances that they had experienced previously, and now some similar circumstances brought them to a pain crisis.
It did. It brought them to an agitation and anxiousness that only made their physical pain worse or more difficult to manage, however you want to put it. So the more you can get to know a person and their family and their history, watch a crisis unfolding and bring that knowledge to the solution. And since we're all looking at things from a different perspective, one of those might be the answer to that crisis point, and you never know which one. And so each person on the team is so valuable in that way. So I'm as a chaplain, I'm looking for not just the spiritual, but the emotional as well. Again, we're all looking for those things. In particular, staying behind and asking a lot of questions and trying to get to know them as quick as I can, because you never know how much time you have with a person before they move to a different setting, move to a different state, or pass away. You just never know.
Your assessment and evaluation, you may see things that might come up later. I think in your previous video, you talked about hooks, but that helps you anticipate what those needs might be later on. And then if a crisis occurs, then you can maybe help de-escalate those symptoms.
Sometimes a person will just say one little thing like, the last thing I promised my husband before he lost his cognition was that I would bring him home, and that becomes a key to what the plan of care is going to be. Whoever hears that gets to carry that to the rest of the team and help everyone help the family, do their plan of care, what they're going to do next and how they're going to care for that person. It might be the chaplain.
We've talked about team just kind of globally several times. Can you expound a little bit on the the team for palliative and hospice? What's your team like?
Absolutely. And in the private sector, a lot of that's driven by Medicare because Medicare pays for hospice in a large part. Medicare has mandates about who's going to be on the team. And I'm certainly not an expert in that, but as a team member, I kind of know who's around me, so I can answer it from that perspective. The at a minimum, the players you see on a team are usually the medical side, the doctor and nurse. The nurse practitioner. Brunt of the work is borne by the CNAs or the techs, who do a lot of the personal care for the patient. Then you have your psychosocial, like the social worker, who will always be asking about funeral arrangements and legal things. Power of attorney, and I really shouldn't go much farther with that because I'm not a social worker and I don't want to misquote. Medicare insists that you have a chaplain on the team too. The family can decline chaplain visits, but I would encourage them not to, just because you just never know how much a chaplain could make a difference. You just don't know until you try and see if the chaplain clicks with your family or not.
When I was in the private sector doing hospice, and I would tell patients and their families that this is our team, which are all the disciplines that you just named. Sometimes they'd say, "Oh, I don't want the social worker, or I don't want the chaplain," or they'd have somebody that they didn't want coming to the house. And I would tell them, really, the first time, I need you to meet with everybody on the team. And then if they don't click, just like what you said, if it's not something that you want, it might be something that you think about, but right now, just let your front door be a revolving door and let all those people come in and introduce themselves.
And I really appreciate that. And I was always glad when admissions nurses or the rest of my team had the same attitude and remark, because usually, especially for the chaplain, the myths that we talked about earlier, usually they want to decline the chaplain because they've had some bad experience in a religious organization or something along those lines. The chaplain is just going to bring up all those bad memories or try to convert them or whatever the case may be. Chances are that's not going to be true. Chances are the chaplain's going to bring a whole different perspective to what's going on. Again, trying to reframe things for them. Or they may say, well, I have a pastor or an imam or, a rabbi of my own, and that's great. The hospice chaplain always takes a back seat to their spiritual home. But we bring a different perspective that their spiritual leader probably doesn't get to spend a lot of time doing or being involved with. And that's the end of life and all of those issues that surround the end of life. We can help them move through that chapter in life in a way that supplements their spiritual leader and their spiritual home. We work as a team with their community spiritual leader as well. In that sense, they become a part of the team.
I've got a 3-part question for you, and it basically has to do with your day. Can you tell me like a typical day, a good day, a bad day? Can you give me like 3 different days?
Sure. In my current setting, I'll probably spend about half my day rounding, hopefully, with the palliative team answering consults on the hospital side. So again, that may or may not be a patient that ends up in hospice. It may just be pain management, a complex goals of care discussion, those kind of things. But I'm either with the team rounding or following the team later to try to do a spiritual assessment to see if we can add to the understanding of what's going on with an assessment from the chaplain's perspective. The other half of the day, I'll be doing the same thing in the hospice unit with those who have chosen hospice and are spending their last days in an incredibly 5-star comfortable environment for the veteran to pass away, and for the family to be a part of that as much as in them lies, we would say, to work with the family and the veteran in that setting with the assessment, and then just being there with them. And the medical team and the rest of the team providing that perspective. So being in meetings where we discuss our patients is crucial. And that is, even in the private sector, that's a Medicare mandated part of your day, is being in meetings, discussing the patient, with the entire team, so that everyone's perspective is present and helpful. A good day for me, I'm a team player. I had too many church pastor opportunities where I was a lone ranger. And that's true for the vast majority of church pastors. I don't like to do that. In the military, you're a necessary part of the team as a chaplain. You're part of the commander's weapon in his hip belt, so to speak, his or her. And in the on the medical side, on the healthcare side, you're also a part of a team. And so on a good day, I get to round with my teams, be a part of their discussions with the patient and their family. Because like I said, a lot of times, those initial discussions, I may not have a lot to say, but I'm listening for things to follow up on and to bring that perspective back to the team. That's a good day. On a really good day, I'll be absolutely exhausted from just the sheer depth of what people are going through and walking with them through that. So that's a good day and a bad day.
Okay.
Because yeah, walking away from that and going home and trying to recover, can be tough sometimes.
When you have those difficult days, do you bring in extra help?
We do have extra help. It depends on what the difficulty is. When it comes to help, partnering with our community spiritual leaders is sometimes a key part of my job. If a family needs to get Catholic last rites, or
Okay.
wants to consult, they're new to the area and they need a rabbi to consult with end of life issues from their particular Jewish perspective, or whatever the case may be. But when it comes,
you talk, I'm going to interrupt you. I know you talked a little bit about how you've received a considerable education in all of those aspects, but it's not necessarily one size fits all, that you do have different chaplains with different backgrounds at the VA. So you're able to kind of help those people find that extra help if they need something specific.
Absolutely. While we learn about the various religions and their impact in the United States where we work, and especially here in Florida where I work, that's great when that person's there to help fulfill that need. But usually we have to go into the community to find that. And I kind of squirreled on your earlier question about difficulties and who do you turn to, and what do you do? And a lot of times it's the team members. Grow close to a lot of team members, and you work hard on a lot of things together, walking through families' very difficult times. And so a lot of times just kind of talking it through with another team member is really helpful. So you want team members who are team players, which is different than most of healthcare or any other, especially chaplains. Not a lot of team players, and chaplaincy is the fit for the team player kind of guy.
You mentioned that at the end of a good day that you could totally be exhausted and wiped out from everything that you have been through and the experiences of the day. How do you refresh? How do you stay rejuvenated? How do you fulfill yourself when you're giving so much to other people?
And I think, as a chaplain, but especially in hospice, you have to be very intentional about that. You can't just let it happen. And so when I started in chaplaincy, hospice chaplaincy, I should say, 7 years ago, I actually had a second job in the evening, 1, 2, maybe 3 nights a week at the most, where I did something completely and absolutely different from from hospice work and chaplaincy, where I drove a monorail for Disney World.
Wow.
Yeah, I did that for about 6 years, actually, part-time at night. And you get to play, with families and kids. You get to do something that's very mechanical and engineering and safety issue, working with a complex machine like a monorail that's constantly breaking. So you learn a lot about those things. It's very different. I'm not doing that now. So now I might focus more, on my own spiritual life, reading, relaxing, traveling, being very intentional about taking time off, coming home and freeing my mind from what I did during the day. I have a great wife and family that really helped me with that.
So kind of allow yourself to mentally walk away and allow you to have some downtime for yourself.
You have to be intentional about that in this kind of work, or it I noticed my first year in hospice that I started to see everyone as being in hospice around me, and realized that no, that's not, no, not everybody's dying. I
That's
mean, we're all
really
dying, but not everybody is in that last moment, and so you have to think hard about what you're doing.
Are there other pitfalls that, you think chaplains might be at risk for other than self-care?
For everybody, it's going to be different. For me, one of the and I can tell a story that goes with this. I was at a neighborhood event, and I met a neighbor who asked me what I did, and I told her I was a hospital chaplain at that time. And she said, "Oh my gosh, that's so incredible! My sister just had a baby, and the baby was very, very sick, and was at the children's hospital in the system that I worked in." And the most helpful thing for us was this chaplain who came by a few times and just help us talk things through, and work through what we were feeling and the events that were happening. And he was just made such an impact on us. And I can't remember his name, but he was great. And I thought, that's it. If
Yeah,
I can do my job where they can't remember my name,
yeah.
but there was an impact, then that's the kind of impact I want to be. I don't want it to be about me and myself, which is hard when I've found, families where there's a monorail driver in the family. We get to talking about that instead of why I'm supposed to be there. But that's pretty rare. Uh, that for me, that's a pitfall that's particular to me. That it's not about me. It's about the family and the patient that I'm working with, and trying to walk through this time with them. Depends on the chaplain.
It is a balancing because I know many times I'll be talking with a patient and a family, and they'll say something that I can think of a similar situation, or I can think of something anecdotal that I might be able to add. And it's always a question in my mind, should I tell them? Sometimes those building those bridges with people is helpful for them as part of their healing. But it's a balancing act to figure out, am I telling them this for me, or is this part of what they need to hear?
We do that in our clinical pastoral education too. The sharing of yourself, is this for your own therapy or is it for them? And to be able to stop in that moment and run that through your head real quickly is it's a learned skill. I try to connect with people on the little things, like the military background. We joke about, their Army and I'm Air Force, and so we harass each other for a moment. And if I can make them laugh on something like that, then that's a good relationship builder. But I have to be careful. If this person reminds me of my mom, who passed away just a few years ago, or if this person is going through something similar to an experience I went through, is this my therapy? Or is it
Right.
for them? And it's not, I don't want it to be my therapy. That's something I do on my own time, not with
Okay.
this family.
Do you have a success story that you want to share?
Yeah, it depends on how you define success, right? Some people want to die alone and some do not. And we had a patient in a skilled nursing facility who very much needed us all the time, on the team, one of us all the time. And we realized that this person had no family and was alone, and was not the kind of person who wanted to die alone. They loved people, but there was no one there. And in this facility too, if we weren't giving him care, he's probably not receiving any care. And so sometimes oh my gosh, they're calling again. We came to realize quickly that this person was lonely, and knew they were dying and was afraid to die alone. And at the end, the nurse called me and said, "I got to run, but this person is moments." And so I ran over there and held this guy's hand for about an hour. I knew his Christian background, and I knew that music was important to him. And so I tried to sing. I always tell people I won't sing because I'm not allowed to hasten death. But and just was reassuring, and I knew he was He loved his Bible, and so I read what I could, and literally held his hand for an hour until he drew his last breath. Nobody
Wow.
else in the world knows that that happened
Yeah.
except him. And to me, that's a success. It's if you want to change the world, that's how you do it. One person at a time like that. And again, no one has any idea that that event occurred. And to be honest, I don't even remember his name. I hate to say that, but after so many years and so many people, but I vividly remember doing that. And to me, that's a good day. That's a success.
That is a success because you met what their needs were. And I don't know that the name, is as important as the experience. Tell
You
me
bet.
any tips. Do you have tips either for maybe a patient or for a caregiver or for family?
Sure, absolutely. The first I would say is don't decline the chaplain. Meet your chaplain, meet him or her, and see if this person clicks. And if not, ask for another chaplain if that's possible. It may or may not be possible with the provider you're using, but don't just give it a chance and see if it works. Even if you have great spiritual support from your spiritual home, just give it a shot, because there are dozens and dozens and dozens of chaplains out there, and not all of them will be the perfect fit, but many of them will. And so give it a shot. Just try it, and then if you need to, decline them. but give it a shot, really,
Yeah.
honestly.
Yeah. I tell them green eggs and ham. Try it once. And if you don't like it, then
Good
you don't. Yeah. Then one
good
and
word
done.
picture. Yeah, I like it. I
Okay.
like it. And then,
Oh,
well,
go
I was going
ahead.
to say too, when you do have a chaplain, ask, go ahead and ask them the really, really hard questions that you're struggling with. Um, and I'm not going to have answers. I don't. In fact, I don't want to have answers. What I want to do is help you. I'm going to ask more questions that make you ask other questions, to reframe it and look at things from a different perspective.
What are
But
some questions for a chaplain?
people want to know what's going to happen to them after they die, which of course I don't really have an answer for. I know from my religious and spiritual background, we have partial answers. But I want to, I'm more than willing to probe that with someone and see what they think, and where they're coming from with it, and what does their background say about that. I have a really bad relationship, or I really hurt somebody in my life, and I need to get that off my chest before I go. Clear the room if you need to, and just you and the chaplain. Um,
Sure.
you know, yeah, there's a lot of hurt and suffering that happens in life well before death. On the deathbed, a lot of people want to clarify those things. Don't be afraid to do that. It can be really helpful, not just for you, but for the rest of the family too.
And I think that's one of the selling points I have for hospice in general is that when cure isn't possible, healing can still occur. That
Yes.
we care and we want to provide compassion, even when cure and resolution of an illness is not possible. Those other things definitely are possible. And to choose to be not resuscitate, or I don't want to be put on machines, to me that's courageous, to understand that end of life is approaching and I'm going to meet it, and this is how I want to meet my end. And I think that's a courageous decision, to make that decision and to accept that fate, and tell people this is how I want it to look for me. And then the selflessness of the family to say, I'm going to make sure they get it. They get what they want.
Even if it's not what they want, because
Right.
everyone wants their loved one to keep on living and be as
Keep
happy and
fighting.
right. Keep fighting. But maybe the fight is, to make this a different kind of time now. The last chapter is different than all the others. So the
Mhm.
fight is different than all the others.
What about tips for a chaplain? Do you have like some suggestions or vision, or tips that you might give to somebody who's looking in to be in a chaplain for a palliative team or a hospice team?
So more tips for someone looking into it, that I can, because I'm really not an expert even after these years. I feel like I'm still a student and still learning. But for someone looking into it too, I mean, we regularly have people come through the hospital and say, "How do I fill out an application to be a chaplain too?" And of course, after they learn about the educational trail, which it took me almost 10 years of education to get here, that usually they walk away really sad. And I think, oh, well, wait, we need volunteers too, you know? So I think one of the big ones is, can you work in a pluralistic environment? Can you support the First Amendment of the United States and still keep your faith strong in the process? Because that's, again, we've talked about, supporting people in their faith and in their strengths, even if they have no faith in any, higher being. Can you work in that environment and support people with that without being a person who's here to convert?
Right.
Or proselytize is the big word that we use. Proselytizing is a big no-no. Can you work in that kind of environment? Some can, and some just aren't cut out for that, and that's okay. There's a place for you too somewhere else. But chaplaincy is different than pastoring in that big respect right there.
It sounds like the choice for a chaplain career, it's a journey to get there. There's a lot of education, a lot of experience that's required, and you have to be a dedicated lifelong learner as well.
You bet. And being a chaplain too isn't just healthcare, and it's not just military too, but there are many companies now that are hiring chaplains to be on staff, especially companies that do difficult or potentially dangerous work, But even then, if a room full of office workers is a room full of hurt too. And so companies are finding out that chaplains are a chaplain who's not a proselytizer is a good part of their mental health care that they offer. And so you've seen chaplains in airports and other companies. There are a million ways that you can be a chaplain out there, and with the police force, with the fire department. Some of them require a lot less education. Some of them require a lot more, but finding the one that fits is the key.
Any final words that you want to, parting thoughts, final words? Let's hear those.
Well, thank you for asking to bring the other perspectives of the other team members into the podcast series. I really appreciate that, because and I'm not surprised that you're doing that, because the teamwork is so important between all the members, and the communication and those skills. So I really appreciate the opportunity to be a part of it. I did 25 years as a church pastor and enjoyed a whole lot of things about it. But there were a whole lot of things that I didn't enjoy. And I might have should have moved into chaplaincy a lot earlier in life because it's a better fit. And so finding that fit, I tell people every day I go to work, I am where the rubber meets the road.
Yeah.
And that's where I want to be. A lot of these other things are in church work were fun and fascinating, and I really enjoyed a lot of it. But it meant the most to me to be with people at their deepest hurts and their biggest crises, like the trauma unit or like hospice, which are two completely, utterly different parts of healthcare. A trauma unit and hospice. One is very peaceful, or is aiming for peace. It's not peaceful, but it's aiming for peace. And the other is incredibly adrenaline oriented. And that's the trauma unit. Yeah. But it's where the rubber meets the road, both times. And that's where I want to be. And so that's the way I was created. And so knowing who you are and becoming self-aware is incredibly important for a chaplain.
Well, it sounds like you're right where you're supposed to be. And it might have taken you a little while to get here.
Finally.
But you're right where you're supposed to be. Given me a lot of information and have deepened my appreciation for what the chaplain brings to the team. And I'm very grateful for the time that you've given me.
Thank you. I really appreciate that. having the opportunity to be here and bring a different perspective. Thank you.
You bet. Thanks so much. Bye now.
All right. Bye.